Okay, it's preparing to live stream. Maybe 1 minute. We can start. Wait a minute. Okay, preparing to live stream. 1 minute.
Right.
Okay, let's start. Okay, Min, can we start now?
Yep. Yep. Okay, so let me share.
Wait a minute. Can I start for a while for
sure,
addressing with my student, by the way? Well,
sure.
hello everyone. Good afternoon everyone. Jadi semuanya, selamat siang semuanya.
Selamat siang, Pak.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to this visiting professor program. Today, this visiting professor program is supposed for the, how do I say, English material development course. And every student who took this course supposed to join this kind of program. This program is going to be, what is that? Deliver for about 3 times, once in a week. It's going to be delivered in every Monday, so afternoon. So everyone, please, adik-adik semuanya, please be ready in every Monday afternoon for having this kind of Zoom meeting for the visiting professor program. And today, not only today, for today until the next 3 meeting, we are going to have a very special guest lecturer from University of Otago, New Zealand. This is Dr. Minh Nguyen. Please welcome to Dr. Minh Nguyen. She is one of the linguistic lecturer in, how do I say, in University of Otago. So we hope that from the material that going to be presented by Dr. Nguyen, you and we, not only you, but we are from the UMS can have some kind of new insight, especially for the English material development program, and like what I said before, Dr. Nguyen, we have around 200 students for the material development class. However, because maybe today is 1 o'clock in the afternoon in our place here, so it means that some of the classes maybe they are joining for another course. So maybe we still have around 72 students for today. I think it's quite more than enough for us for having this kind of activity. Hopefully, for all the students who can join for today, we can have a new insight from Dr. Nguyen, especially for the English material development. So we can not only just learning from Mr. Harry, from Miss Shahara, and also from Pak Joko Sriono as the classroom lecturer in this course. But however, we can have the new insight from another lecturer, especially from Dr. Nguyen here, which is the expert of the linguistic and also material development here. And without any further ado, for the next 100 minutes, I'm going to give the place and time for Dr. Nguyen. So please, Dr. Nguyen, this time is yours.
Thank you very much. So, all right, let me share my screen with you. Oh, would you please allow me to share the screen?
Wait a minute. Let me make you the co-host. Is that okay?
All right, thank you.
Okay. Already done?
Okay, great.
Can you do that?
Right. Yep. So, right. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yeah, did the job though.
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about language teaching materials use and evaluation, which is an area that I'm really interested in and have been working on for the last 10 years or so, right? So I'm gonna focus especially on textbooks, right? Language textbooks. Can you all see my screen here?
Yes.
All right.
Perfectly clear.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. So the reason why I focus on textbooks is because of their central role in language teaching programs, right? So we know that in many contexts around the world that I know of, textbooks are usually a core component of the teaching program. We also know that in foreign language teaching contexts, such as Vietnam or Thailand or Indonesia, where learners are not immersed in the target language environment, the textbooks plays a very important role, right, in providing input and practice opportunities for students. However, we also know from research that textbooks are not free from problems. We're going to see later on, right? And one of the biggest problems that researchers have pointed out or have found with textbooks is they tend to lag behind research, meaning they don't reflect. They don't always reflect our current thinking in language teaching. Okay, so I argue that it is important for those who learn to become teachers, right, to develop skills in selecting, evaluating, and adapting textbook in order to improve the textbooks, and also to make sure that the textbooks that they choose or that they use is suitable for their classroom. So this is the contents that I'm going to focus on for the next 3 sessions. Excuse me. So in today's session, I'm going to look at language textbook use and evaluation in general, so a very general introduction to the topic, and then I'll zoom in adapting textbooks for teaching grammar, right? Especially teaching grammar following the task-based instruction principles. And then next week, I'm going to talk about evaluating and adapting textbook for teaching communicative skills, and I'm going to focus on conversational skills and language functions. And then in the last session, I'm going to talk about how to evaluate and adapt textbook to teach English as an international language, right? So this is a very important topic, given that, in today's globalized world, we communicate with, in English, right, with people from diverse lingual cultural backgrounds, not only with native speakers, but also with other L2 speakers like ourselves as well. All right, so let's start. Okay. All right. So as I said before, the textbook is the core component, right, of any language teaching program, and then there are many different benefits of using textbooks. Hang on. I think there's something wrong with my computer. Okay. Oh yeah, here you are.
Is it okay?
Yeah, right. So so you can see that the first point is the textbook is a framework, right? Or a frame that can regulate and time the program. So this means that it can help to make sure that all students in the program receive similar content, and so you can evaluate them or assess their learning in the same way. So basically give them the same test because they touch they touch the same content. And in many situations, a textbook can serve as a syllabus, right? So, like in Vietnam, for example, the textbook is the syllabus. Not sure about Indonesia. And so the use of the in the eyes of the learner, for example, no textbook means no purpose. Okay, so the learner may think that, oh, if there's no textbook, the teachers don't take my learning seriously. Okay, a textbook can provide ready-made teaching text, okay, and learning task, and so that's why they can save the teachers time and give teachers time to devote to improving their teaching and giving feedback to students, right, rather than to material production. And so for novice teachers, those who don't have much experience in teaching, a textbook can provide security, guidance, and support. A textbook is also a cheap way of providing learning materials, and especially for teachers, for non-native speaking teachers, right? The textbook can provide or it can provide reliable source of input for teachers to rely on. But as I said before, right, the textbook also has a lot of limitation. Okay, so the first limitation is they may not be suitable, right, to all learners. Why is it? Because mass production textbook is usually written for the global markets. Okay, they are written for the global market, so they do not reflect the specific learning needs and interests of the specific group of students that we are working with. So they require adaptation, right? The topics in textbooks may not be relevant for or interesting to all students. I'm going to give you an example later on. Textbooks often contain inauthentic language and distorted content. May sound a bit harsh, but a lot of research has pointed out that, because textbooks have to incorporate teaching points, so they have to rely on scripted language, right? So the language, the dialogues that are included in textbooks are usually scripted. So they're not, the language is not natural. And also textbook writers usually rely on their intuition as native speakers rather than on corpora of language use, right? So, the way that they present, dialogues, or the way that they present language functions may not reflect the way that we use language in the real world. Also, in order to make textbooks acceptable in different contexts, controversial topics are usually avoided. Instead of the controversial topics, an idealized view of the world tends to be presented. And I'm going to give you an example later on. And then finally, if the teachers become too dependent on the textbooks for teaching, they can become de-skilled and their creativity can become reduced. So in other words, a textbook might inhibit teachers' creativity. All right, so let's look at some example here. This is a study that I conducted with my colleague from Hanoi Teachers Education University, and we look at evaluating the cultural content of high school English textbooks used in Vietnam. And we found that the books tend to disconnect with the Vietnamese students' cultural experiences. So if you look at this example, right, this is an excerpt from year 11 English textbook. Year 11 is like age 17, right? So the topic, in this activity, students are asked to discuss whether they should take a gap year after high school. Now, I'm not sure about Indonesian young people, but for Vietnamese young people, the concept of gap year is totally foreign to them. The concept doesn't exist in our culture. All right, so we don't have gap years. Okay, after high school, either we join the workforce or we go to university. We don't take gap year. Okay.
Yes, same with Indonesia.
And with Indonesia, okay. And then if you look at the image that the textbook include here, now although the activity involve local student, right, Vietnamese student talking about their experiences, the image, right, present actually a Western guy traveling the world. So we argue that students may have difficulty relating to this kind of topic because it is not relevant to their everyday life experiences. Okay. So when we have an activity like this, what should we do? Okay. Modify it. Either replace it with something else or modify it. Okay. This is another example from my own study, okay, looking at another set of textbook in Vietnam. I found that when I look at the language, the dialogue, the textbook language, okay, presented to students, I found that the books tend to present very unnatural, right, unrealistic language models. So they fail to prepare students to use English in the real world. Now, in this activity, students are presented expression of opinions in English. And if you look at how, they are taught to disagree. Okay, so look at, row 3, for example. Okay, partially agreeing. Well, I see your point, but I don't quite agree. Okay, to a certain extent, yes, but Okay, so far so good. If we look at disagreeing, I don't agree, I'm afraid I disagree, that's wrong, that's not true. Strongly disagree, what nonsense, what rubbish, I completely disagree. Okay, so what is the problem with this model, this language model? Okay, the problem is when I compare this linguistic presentation, right, of disagreement with the authentic disagreement produced by Australian English speakers and even Vietnamese speakers of English, I found a mismatch. Okay, so if you look at Australian English disagreement, for example, you see that this is how they express disagreement. Okay, yes, but it's true, but well, maybe, but I think, well, my feeling is, I think. Okay, they don't say I disagree or that's wrong or that's not true. Okay, too strong. Okay, so yeah, so this is not typically how native speakers of English and even native speakers of Vietnamese do disagreeing in everyday interaction. Okay, so in terms of content, all right, this is from my own study with some colleagues in Canada and Australia. So we look at gender and sexual minority groups in Vietnamese ELT textbooks, and we found that the textbook tend to present a very biased views regarding gender roles. Now, if you look at this text, okay, look at this text, grammar, okay, and let's read it together. Mrs. Hung, right? So students are asked to read the text and choose the correct verb form, and they're presented with this text. Okay, so Mrs. Hung is a housewife. Every day she does or is doing most of the housework. Okay, so housewife does housework. She cooks or is cooking, washes the clothes and is cleaning the house. But today is Mother's Day and Mrs. Hung isn't doing any housework. Her husband and children are doing it all for her. At the moment, she watches or is watching her favorite program on TV. Her daughter Len does or is doing the cooking. Her son Minh does or is doing the laundry, and her husband, Mr. Long, tidy up or is tidying up the house. Everybody in the family tries or is trying hard, right, to make it a special day to Mrs. Hung. Right. So what we can see from this text is, although gender roles are described equally, right, with both the mother and the father sharing the housework, presumably, in the hope to depict a more kind of like gender equitable family model in contemporary society of Vietnam, the duties assigned to family members are still described in a prejudiced manner. So you see that the father is taking charge of heavy lifting, and the mother taking charge of cooking, shopping for food, doing the laundry, right? And additionally, when we look at the images and the text, right, we found that the books tend to depict only traditional types of families, the kind of families that have both parents, so both parents and children, or sometimes grandparents, parents and children. And they totally ignore or overlook non-traditional families, for example, single parent family, divorced parents, for example. And so when students are asked to write, okay, about their own family, okay, the template here explicitly tells them to include mom and dad as their family members, right? So we argue that, students from non-traditional family types may not be able to relate to this kind of activity, and they may feel marginalized, they may feel, alienated because their experiences are disregarded, right? Okay, so what is the implication for teacher then, after seeing all of this limitation with textbooks? Okay, so I took this from Tomlinson 2009. Oh, sorry. No set of material is ideally suitable, okay, for any particular learner or group of learners. No set of material is ideally suitable for any particular teacher. No set of material is ideally suitable for particular target users. So in other words, right, there are no perfect textbooks And so we should not be looking for one. Okay, rather we should make materials more effectively by evaluating them and adapting them, to suit our classroom. So any materials can be made more effective, right, by being evaluated and adapted. Okay, according to Tomlinson 2009, materials evaluation and adaptation should be informed by our substantiated beliefs. So not any kind of beliefs, but beliefs that are backed up by literature, by research about language learning. It should be informed by the needs and the wants of the target users of the materials, and the contextual constraint of the target user as well. So in other words, material should be suitable with the local culture of the student, with the age, gender, levels of proficiency of the student, their learning goals, the syllabus that we are using, exam requirements, so on and so forth. All right. So in other words, okay, any kinds of textbook, any textbooks must be used with caution, and they need to be evaluated carefully before being used. All right, so let's move on to the next part, which is adaptation. Okay, what can we adapt? Now, if we have to adapt textbooks, what can we adapt? Basically, anything. Okay, so anything that is not suitable to our lesson aims, our lesson objectives, to our students' goals, our student needs and interests, proficiency, culture, gender, age, or to our own teaching methodology, our beliefs about language teaching and learning. So what makes effective learning? What makes effective teaching to us? Okay, so we can adapt anything. Aims of the lesson, aims of the unit, topics of the unit, the texts that are included in the units, the visual, for example, pictures. Okay, so going back to the example of family types that I just presented now. Okay, if I were to teach that lesson, I would replace, okay, one of the pictures, okay, to include more kind of non-traditional, more non-normative, okay, family types, okay, to represent minority groups, to represent everyone. Okay, guidelines and explanations, exercises, activities, tasks, games, quizzes, and questionnaires. Okay, how can we adapt the textbooks? We can omit, okay, activities, pictures, okay. We can reorder them, okay. We can replace them. We can change them. We can combine activities together, or we can add, okay, add text, add tasks, add activities. Usually we omit because the learners are already clear about language points, so they don't need further practice, okay. Or if learners are already competent in the skill, or if there are too many tasks on a particular area or point, if the items area concerned is not a priority of the lesson that we are teaching, if the item, the task is not well designed, if the item or the task is not well suited to its aims, or if the topic is not appropriate for learners. Okay. We may also reorder activities, okay, or recombine them in order to match our aims or match the objectives of the lesson, match the learning needs of the student that we are working with. Sometimes we combine because sometimes we can reorder so that we can conduct the lesson in a certain sequence. For example, instead of starting the lesson with presentation of grammar, we could use the practice task. Okay, so we could reorder the activities and use the practice task first in order to test how much students have already known about the language points that we want to teach them, so that we can make decision on how much more we need to teach them. Okay, so revise an earlier area than the textbook does. You may want to combine activities in order to compare and contrast areas, or we may want to combine activities or text in order to provide thematic unity, so coherence within the unit, or provide an appropriate follow-up. So there are many reasons why we can do that. We can replace as well. So replace a text if it is too long or too short, if it is not appropriate to the objectives of the lesson, if the content of the text, for example, is not appropriate to our learners' age, cultural experiences, okay? If the text is unclear, is confusing, is misleading, or if the tasks are not well designed. We may add because areas are not covered adequately, because the text or the picture or the task are not provided, because there are fewer texts, fewer pictures or tasks than we need, because the tasks are limited in scope, or because they are limited in terms of variety. Okay, where do we find the alternative materials? Okay, we can find them from all different sources. So from the same textbook, sometimes we might want to combine different parts, okay, or different activities from the same textbook to provide a coherence of the unit. Or we can find the material from other textbooks or from authentic materials from publication, for example, storybooks, newspaper, magazines, media, okay, so radio, podcast, TV, internet, social media, blogs, for example, right? So blogs like travel review blogs, food reviews, film reviews, advertisements, okay, or corpora, or corpora is quite interesting, or your own material, so material that you create by yourself. In terms of corpora, I have posted a link here. I don't know, we may not have enough time to look into the specific corpora here, but if you have time, you may want to explore this link by yourself. It gives a lot of useful and practical tips for teachers in how to use corpora in order to supplement what you teach, right? Just want to share an example of how I use corpora. So the other day I received a text message from an English teacher in Vietnam, and she asked me that, so she and her colleagues are writing end of the year test for students, and they are trying to look for a synonym for the word longevity, okay? And her colleague suggested to her that we can use life expectancy, and she didn't agree. She said that life expectancy and longevity are not synonymous, so they don't mean the same thing. But her colleagues didn't agree with her, so she asked me, so are they the same or are they different? Because when I look at the dictionary, we can't tell. Okay, we can't tell the meaning of them based on dictionary meaning, based on dictionary definition. So I show her how to use corpora. So I go to the English corpora website, and I use the news. Okay, so news media, right? Media news corpora to show her to search for longevity and to search for life expectancy. So when we see how these two words appear in a variety of text, okay, in context, we can see immediately that they are not the same. They're very different. Okay, so the meanings are very different. Although if you just look at the dictionary, right, you can't really tell. Okay, so that's a very good way. So to supplement the textbook, to supplement the materials that you use, or even to teach vocabulary, to teach grammar as well. Okay, so when you have time, do explore the links that I post here. Okay, on the slides. I'm going to send the slide to Mr. Harry after the class. All right. Okay, so I think before I move on to talk about grammar, teaching grammar, and adapting materials to teach grammar, I would like to pause a little bit, for questions, for thoughts and comments. Right? How much time can we afford to this?
Sorry?
How much time do we have for questions, thoughts, and comments before I move on to the second part?
In total, we can have this class until 3 o'clock. So maybe 5 until 10 minutes for skipping for a question is fine.
Okay, so about 4 questions. All right, yeah.
Anyone who want to have a question for Dr. Nguyen?
Any question, any thought, any comments before I move on?
Hello, everybody. If not, maybe let me start from the question. Is it okay? Can I
Sure.
give the question?
Yeah.
I remember what you said at the beginning of your presentation, Dr. Nguyen, that you mentioned in Vietnam, there is no syllabus anymore at school for the English material, but the book itself is syllabus, right? Did you say that?
Yes, I mean, they do
Yes.
have a curriculum. They do have a
Yes.
curriculum, but
Can you mention a little bit about that?
I'm not really sure. I mean, like, so currently they have the curriculum framework, but then the textbooks, I mean, they do have some kind of like, not sure about syllabus. I think it's more like a curriculum.
Okay.
Okay, rather than a syllabus. And then they write textbooks based on that curriculum framework, right? So basically the language textbook, the English language textbooks is the syllabus for the teachers at the school level. At the school level. Yeah.
So they do not need to make another, how do I say, like syllabus for the whole semester because the book itself is syllabus, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I see. Because it's almost the same for what we have in Indonesia, but in the previous curriculum, every 4 years we change the president, we change the Ministry of Education, and we change the curriculum when we do that. So in this newest curriculum, we have the what we call curriculum. How do I say Merdeka Belajar? How do I say it in English, by the way? The freedom curriculum, yeah. And this itself, one of the change that is quite very clear is in English, in the classroom, we do not have any, what is that? We change the RPP or syllabus or lesson plan. We do not use any lesson plan anymore, but we make a model. Yeah, so the model itself is the lesson plan. Yeah, but we still have the syllabus. Syllabus is a little bit like the whole material from one semester to
I see.
for the whole semester.
I believe that they still have some kind of informal kind of syllabus in each school, but still, I mean, the textbook itself is the syllabus. So they just follow the textbooks, right? So for example, after every four units, you have a review unit, for example, and then you have a progress test, right? So at the end, you have an achievement test, for example, right? So they just follow
formative and summative. We call it formative.
Yeah. So formative, summative tests are based on the textbooks.
Yeah. We do not remove the syllabus, but we just remove the lesson plan here in Indonesia.
I see.
We use the lesson plan, but we just make a model in every module.
Right.
The model is also the lesson plan.
I see. It's quite interesting that textbooks is a big issue in Vietnam because the government changes the textbook like every 10 years, and it causes a lot of the discussion in social media. So a lot of people criticize the government for spending so much money on changing the textbook, and many teachers and parents also come to social media and express their frustration on the contents of the textbooks. Teachers themselves as well. I still remember that when I work in Vietnam, I work with the teachers during the refreshers workshops conducted by Ministry of Education and Training of Vietnam. And a lot of teachers ask me, I don't like the textbooks, but I feel that I have to use everything in the textbooks. And I told them, no, I don't think so. I don't think it's true. I don't think that you have to use everything in textbook simply because no textbook can be suitable to every student, to every classroom. So you have the authority, you have the autonomy, right, to modify the textbook. Don't take textbook as a kind of Bible. It's not, right? It's not the absolute authority, right? You can rely on the textbook for certain things, but you at the same time, you can also modify it to suit your own goals, your own methodology, and your students' learning needs. So it's still the same. The same kind of discussion now in social media in Vietnam. So teachers complain about textbook, but they don't know whether they are allowed to modify the textbook or not. So lots of discussion.
Here in Indonesia, we do not use the specific textbook anymore from the government itself, but all of the material, the model is come back to the the what is that to the teacher. So the teacher is the one who are supposed to prepare the model, not the textbook. We do not use the model. We do
I
not use the
see.
textbook here right now. So basically,
I
the
see.
government just prepare some kind of team. They create the, how do I say, the core of the syllabus for senior high school, junior high school, from the first grade, third grade, etc. And then it's
Right.
go back to the, what is that? It was socialized to the teacher, and then the teacher is the one who have to how to say it, to understand the syllabus, and then
I
they have
see.
their freedom to create the model based on their understanding, based on the culture and etc. So, but it's good actually because we can what is that, we can facilitate all of the different kind of places like in Indonesia, you know, right, from
That's very
Sumatra,
interesting.
from,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's very interesting. But so do you have a prescribed textbooks for all school or you don't?
No, we don't think so because the teacher itself should create
The teachers can select the textbooks.
not select, they create this text.
They create the materials. Okay.
Yeah, they
Okay.
create the material. We do not have the specific textbook for the senior high school English for the senior. No, we don't have that. But
Oh, that's very
every
interesting.
semester, what is that? The teacher itself need to prepare it by themselves based on the
I
syllabus.
see. I see. I see. Okay. That's give the teachers a lot of autonomy, right?
Yes,
So
that's right.
they can,
That's why
but
we
at
call
the
it
same
freedom
time,
curriculum.
right. So, but at the same time, they also need to have the skills,
That's right. That's the
to
challenge.
develop the materials. That's a challenge. Yeah, quite interesting. Because like in Vietnam at the moment, they have more than one set of textbooks,
Okay.
approved by the Ministry of Education and Training, and each school can choose their own textbooks. But
Okay.
then that's a challenge for the school because they need to have the skills in order to select the kind of textbooks that are suitable to their students, right?
Mm.
So materials adaptation, material evaluation, is a very important topic in the context of Vietnam too. I believe in Indonesia as well. Yeah.
Yes. How about in New Zealand, by the way? Can you tell us
Uh,
about it
now,
a little bit?
okay, so from what I know, okay, so I usually send my thesis student to the language school, the University of Otago Language School for classroom observation,
Yeah.
and to the Polytechnic for teaching practice. And I think in both kind of contexts, they do use the textbooks. So they do have their own textbooks, but I think they do have textbooks, but teachers can supplement the textbook with their own materials.
Wait a minute. Polytechnic is the level like university, right? Not the senior high school.
It's more like vocational training.
Ah, vocational training. I see.
Yeah.
How about junior and senior high school there?
Oh no, I don't think they follow the textbooks. I mean, the
Oh.
teachers have the autonomy to create their own material, to select their materials, and yeah.
So how do the government standardize that? I mean, to make sure that the curriculum from each school were standardized or something like that. Is
They
there
do have a
any?
curriculum level.
I see.
Yeah. And one thing that is quite interesting about New Zealand is their curriculum level are quite wide.
Flexible. Oh, wow.
Flexible, quite wide. So, it's quite interesting. Yeah, I mean, like, because they don't want to put too much pressure on the kids. So,
I
so
see.
a curriculum level can range from, I can cover from like few grade levels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So those those kids who do well can, can cross the level.
Oh,
But
I see.
those who don't do well don't feel bad about themselves because they still
Okay.
within the curriculum level.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And for my own thesis students, I ask them to create the materials. So they have to create their own. I mean, they can go online and get the materials from website like Teach English, a British Council Teaching English website, but then they need to adapt the materials to suit a particular group of students that they are supposed to
That's right.
teach.
Absolutely, we do that.
Yeah, so I put a lot of focus, a lot of emphasis on adapting materials and creating material.
Yeah, this is actually the project that we have for this class of English Medial Development. At the end of this course, every student should create for the material for junior or maybe senior high school. We will discuss about it.
I see.
My students.
Okay. Okay. So if no more question, I move on to the next part of the lecture. Is that okay?
Anyone? Anyone? Anyone who want to give a question? Siti Alda Ibrahim, want to say something? Oh, not yet. Oh, Buana Tirta. Buana Tirta. I think you are raising hand.
Oke, Pak, saya mau bertanya, Pak.
English, please. Talk
Okay,
directly
okay.
to Dr. Nguyen.
Okay, good afternoon. Just like what Miss Ming Yuyan presented, their limitation of using textbook and there are points. Topic in textbook might not be relevant and interesting to all. Textbook often contain inauthentic language and distorted content. Then my question is, how can a teacher provide a relevant and interesting textbook to a student, and how can one identify that the textbook is relevant, interesting, and has authentic language to give to student? Thank you.
That's a very good question and interesting. I mean, I usually advise as the teachers, to talk to students. So survey the student, ask student. Okay. So what I usually ask my TESOL student to do is before during their first week, during their first week, the practicum, do some informal survey with the students, with the group that they're teaching, to ask about their interest. Okay. To ask about their motivation, their goals of learning English. So based on that kind of information, then they may gauge, the kind of materials that may be relevant and interesting to their student. And of course, observation also helps. So when you start teaching, right, always do observe how the student engage with the materials that you use, so that you can, make decisions, okay, that, accordingly. Yeah, so if you observe that the material is too difficult, too boring to the student, right, then change it next time. Okay, so survey and observations. Talk to students, get to know them. Yeah, the better you know your student, right, the more easy it is for you, okay, to find the materials that is relevant to them and interesting to them. Does it make sense?
Buana Tirta? Hello?
Okay, Miss, thank you.
Yes,
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any others, by the way? Adik-adik?
Saya, sir. Saya.
Can you mention your name, please?
Yeah, my name good.
Can you
My
open your
name is
your-
Anissa, sir.
your camera, please, Anissa? So
I
Because-
can, sir, because my brother is near to me.
what do you mean? Okay, that's fine. Go on.
There are many learning media, and one of them is textbook. Do you think there are other learning media that have almost the same benefit as textbook? Miss, that is, sir. Thank you.
Can you repeat a little bit once more? Can you repeat once more, Anissa?
There are many learning media, and one of them is textbook. Do you
Okay.
think there are other learning media that have almost the same benefit as textbook?
Okay.
So what is the question again, Harry? Can you help me with that? Because I don't think I can hear it very well.
Anissa? Are you still
Oh.
here, Anissa?
Yeah, wait, sir. There are many learning media, and one of them is the textbook. Do you think there are other learning media that have almost the same benefit as textbook?
Okay, and what is the learning media which has maybe have benefit like a textbook?
Yes, that's sir.
What are the learning media? Actually, it's already mentioned at the beginning, right? There are many media that you can use for teaching rather than textbook itself, right?
I just go back to that, right?
Yeah,
So
maybe.
this is-
Yeah, you can see that the
Yeah.
the
But
slide.
but the thing is, usually when you select materials from all different sources, right? You need to make sure that it provides a coherence, right, to your course, and make sure that the materials are suitable to the levels of the student, as well as contain the language points or vocabulary that you want to teach in the program, right? You teach to the students, right? So one challenge of using materials from all different sources is the lack of coherence. and you're not sure to what extent, right, it can provide a systematic and kind of planned and syllabus to the students.
Okay. Well, basically there are many, like in the slide you can see that, Anissa. Yeah, as long as what Dr. Nguyen said.
Yes, sir.
With the curriculum, with the purpose of what you're going to teach, I think there are many options that we can use, like from the internet, another material like radio and etc. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there is one more person who raised the hand. Siti Alda Ibrahim.
Yes, sir.
Okay, please go on. You can ask directly to Dr. Nguyen.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon, Miss Minh Nguyen.
Hello.
Okay, my name is Siti Alda Ibrahim, and I want to ask question about what makes a good language textbook. So in language textbook, there is a language IELTS. Is it okay?
There's a limit of what? Sorry.
What makes a good language textbook?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the second question is, I think I can hear the first one. I missed the second one. Your second question.
You know if a language every day with IELTS language is different. So if in language textbook there is a language IELTS, is it okay?
Language?
Oh, IELTS. You know IELTS?
Yes, IELTS.
Oh, like IELTS test.
Yes.
Okay.
So ordinary every day we use English ordinary English language. So if language IELTS is different with ordinary language English.
Oh, I see. Okay. I see.
So is it the textbook there is a IELTS language English? Is it okay?
Okay, that's a good question. Right, that's a very good question. Okay. Now, as I said before, there's no perfect textbooks. All right. So what makes a good textbook is, okay, how effective it is for your student. Okay, does it match your students' learning needs and objectives? Now, of course, if you prepare your student for an IELTS test or a TOEFL test, then the most effective materials is the IELTS test preparation books or the TOEFL, right, preparation books. Yeah. But when you want, if your student want to learn English in order to go overseas and just go traveling, for example, right, for a short term in an English-speaking country, for example, then you may want to find a textbook that focuses on conversational language. Okay, language for tourism, for example, right? So there's no general answer to that question. I think depends on what you are trying to teach, depending on your students' learning goals. Does it make sense?
Alda?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I see. Okay, thank you.
But maybe once more maybe about corpora, maybe our students not really familiar enough with the corpora. Maybe later on we are going to discuss it more about it.
That's interesting. Yeah. So they know how to use corpora.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very good. Yeah.
No. I mean, corpora is not really familiar for our students. Maybe we can discuss a little bit more about it. Corpora.
Oh, okay. I think that let me just and and then go to the link here. The thing is, because I'm not using my work laptop and I'm using my personal laptop and I forget my password to log in the Cobra. Anyway, so if you go to this link, there's an article about how to use Cobra for English language teaching. And there's a lot of materials here, and especially there is a checklist, not really checklist, how to use, a list of corpus website here, which is very useful. How can I open it? Where is it? Okay. Right. So I have to zoom it out a bit. All right. So there's a whole list of corpora for English language teaching here. Okay, British National Corpus, Contemporary Corpus of American English, the COCA one, Michigan Corpus of Academic Spoken English. So if you teach academic English, for example, presentation skill, you might want to, search this corpora to find materials. Michigan Corpus of Upper Level Student Papers, News of Web Corpus, and so when I'm talking about teaching, adapting materials for teaching communication skill in the next session, I'm going to show you how to, I'm going to share a study, right, which actually use a corpus in order to develop materials for teaching pragmatic skills. Yeah. And there's some other one. This is the one that I usually use. Okay. But you need to sign up. Yeah, so it has all different corpus here, from news on the web. Okay, this is the one that I mentioned earlier. I mean, I guided the teacher. Okay, so I walk her through this website, this corpus, in order to check for the meaning of longevity versus expectancy. So there's a lot of, all of corpora here. The thing is, I don't remember my
that's
password.
fine, maybe.
So you just basically type it here and then find match string. Yeah, I need to log in order to see it. But once I log in, they will show me. Okay, they show me, like a list of contexts where the word occurs. Okay, so you can look at each instance, each entry, in order to, generate the patterns.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, so it's very useful. Okay.
Okay, maybe
There's
later
another
on.
one.
Yeah, later on. Wait,
Yeah.
what you want to say something?
I mean, there's another one. Oh, this is a very good one. I usually use this one as well. Okay, for my TESOL student, because when they create their own materials, one challenge is, how do you know if the text is at the right level to your students? Okay, because they're native speakers, and so they can't. I mean, they don't have experience working with non-native speakers, and they have kind of like difficulty gauging how much vocabulary their student already know and what kind of vocabulary their student already know. So what I told them to do is, okay, whatever text that you use, okay, just use this website in order to check the difficulty level. So let's say, so let's say if I have a text like this, okay, just copy, and then paste into it. Is that here? Yeah. And then quick analysis. And it will give you the result. Right. Ah, not this one. Oh, yeah. So it shows you that the percentage of words at B1 level is 16%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you want to see the full result, just click on it. Where is it? Readability. This look quite different from what I mean, usually they show a different kind of information, but I think they might have updated their website recently. But usually they show you how many percent of the vocabulary is within A1 level, A2 level, B1 level, B2 level, C1 level, for example. So, and I usually tell them that, so in order for your student to understand the text, right, only 2% of the words should be new to them. Okay, 2 to 5%. Okay, but best is 2%. So, like for example, if your text is 100 words long, okay, then there should be only 2 words that are new to them in order to help them to engage with the meaning, right? And so that means that if they are if your students are in B1 level, Okay, there should be only 2 words that are beyond B1 level. And I asked them to use this website in order to check the difficulty level of the reading text that they create for their students. So once they see that it's too difficult, they need to go back and modify the text, rewrite it, or adapt it, change a few words or sentences to make sure that it's more comprehensible to the student within the level that they're learning.
Okay, so that's great. It can
Yeah.
it can help us to check whether this is the suitable text for our students or not.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. This is also a very good one because it's free of charge. Now, the corpora one that I have just now shown you, the English corpora one, you need to, you can sign up for free, but as a free account user, there's a limit to how many times you can search. So you need to pay, like for an upgraded account. But this one is the free of charge one. Okay, so if you go to concordance, where is it? Concordance. Okay, and then English. Okay, now one thing with the teaching of grammar in textbook is sometimes they present very rigid rules. Okay, so one of the rules, for example, is we can use some in only positive statements and any in question and negative statement. But it's not true, because if you look at the corpora, check any, okay, and then you go for, just go. Where is it? Go, get concordance. It takes a bit of time, right? So if you look at the corpus and you look at any, and you can see that any actually can occur in positive statement as well. And it has some meaning. All right. So if you teach grammar, what you can do is to get students to go to the corpora, so to use the concordances, okay, to generate the context in which the grammar, the target structure occurs, and then work out on the patterns. Okay, so work out on the rules of use. Okay, so I feel that this is a better way of teaching grammar because it's based on authentic language use, the way that English is used in the real world, rather than based on the writers, the textbook writers' intuition, which can be unreliable sometimes, right? All right, so I hope that if you have time, just go and explore all the corpora here. Yeah.
Sure, I will.
Yeah,
absolutely have a request for my students to check.
Yeah, this is a very good article. It provides a very practical and useful tips for teachers in using corpora to teach English. Right. So take time to read it. Yeah, there are few handouts here as well. Right. Okay. Just go back to my slide. Then slideshow. Okay. So no more question, I guess.
Yes, we can go on.
Let's move on to evaluating and adapting textbook for teaching grammar. Now, textbooks kind of lag behind research in grammar instruction. So a lot of textbooks are still based on the behaviorist model of teaching grammar, especially they are based heavily, or they draw heavily on the PPP approach in teaching grammar. Okay, so this is a typical traditional grammar lesson. I think you may find it very familiar. This is the way that I learned English when I was young. Okay, a PPP lesson. So you all know what a PPP is, right? Yeah. PPP stands for presentation, practice,
production,
and production. Okay, very popular method in foreign language teaching context, right? So the teacher start with, presenting grammar. So teacher models the dialogue, the sample dialogue, and present the new grammar, right? So this is a dialogue. Hello, Bill. Hello, Liz. How are you? Fine, thanks. And you? Fine. Where are you going? I am going to the post office. So this is a new grammar. So the teacher present grammar in the context of a conversation or a dialogue, and then explain grammar. All right. So unpack the rules and explain the rules to student. All right. And then in step 2, the class repeats after the teacher. I'm going to the post office, and maybe do some substitution. For example, I'm going to school. I'm going to the supermarket, and then so the class repeat thoroughly and then individually, and the teacher provides correction. Okay, this is called control practice. Okay, and then next, student make sentences about given pictures. For example, he's going to school, and he's going to the supermarket, and teacher again provides correction. And this is called guided practice. And then finally, the student will work in pairs or groups and ask and answer a question about themselves, and then tell the class about their partner. For example, Harry is going to supermarket, Minh is going to post office, right? So this is called free practice. So we have presentation here. Okay, we have practice here and production here. Okay, so this is a very typical, right, traditional grammar lesson. Now, if you look at textbooks usually follow the PPP approach in presenting and teaching grammar. So I get this example from Bowie and Newton's journal article. This is a very interesting article, very good one. If you have time, I would recommend you to read it. Okay, so it discussed how to adapt textbooks in order to teach grammar following task-based instruction. Okay, so you can see that this is a typical PPP lesson, right? So the lesson begins with a dialogue practice. Okay, dialogue practice activity called look, listen, and repeat. And so the dialogue present the target structure, which is what are you doing? And then I am doing something, right? So this is a target structure, and vocabulary as well. Like, okay, so Mondays, so day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Fridays, and the subject as well. So English, okay, English lesson, math as well, sometimes, yeah. So, right, so basically this is what we call the presentation stage, all right? And then we have practice stage where students just rehearsing, right? They what to do is they rehearse the structure, the target structures, okay, in given dialogues. Okay, so basically 2 students work together, look at the tables here and try to substitute, okay, fill the blank with information from the table. So when do you have science? I have it on Monday, for example. When do you have math? I have it on Tuesday, right? So this is what we call control practice. And then finally, learners do pair or group work activities called Let's Talk, right? Which involves more communicative language practice of the target structure, right? So Let's Talk. So they work in pairs and do the role play, right? Ask and answer question. What subject do you have today? When do you have math? Who is your English teacher, for example, right? So many textbooks, okay, teach grammar this way, very traditional. Now, what's wrong with that? Oops, sorry. All right, so the PPP lesson, as we know, right, has some advantages. For example, it has a very clear structure. It is very straightforward, easy to follow, especially for novice teachers, right? But on the other hand, it has a number of problems that have been criticized, okay, by scholars. Okay, so the first problem is it is very teacher-centered, okay, because the teacher is the person who decides what language points to teach, and the student have very little say, okay, or no say at all in that. Okay, so the language point, the lesson focus is chosen, is determined by the teacher. But most problematically, perhaps, is the PPP does not teach language as a whole, but only teaches one or few language points at a time. Okay, so teach bits and pieces about language. And this is very unnatural because in the real world, when we communicate, we we use all language skills, right, together. So the PPP is based on the assumption that we acquire language in a linear fashion. So we acquire one grammatical structure at a time, and then we move on from that to another one. So we move on from having no knowledge of grammar to mastering the ability to use the new grammar item in controlled situation, and then finally in any situation, which is not true, right? This is not what we know about language acquisition, okay, based on SLA research, okay, because SLA research shows that we do not accumulate grammar knowledge in that way. We do not acquire grammatical structure one after another, but we acquire language system as a whole, okay, as a whole. And the PPP also has a very narrow focus because it restricts student, okay, restricts student experience to one or few single pieces of language at a time. And this is very unnatural, as I said before. And from a practical point of view, if we look at what a classroom teacher, right, says about the PPP, okay, here, a citation from Bui and Newton. So as a teacher and teacher trainer, I came to two main conclusions after 3 years of observing teachers implementing the PPP speaking lessons. First, I found that students show little interest in the dialogue practice activity, in the presentation phrase, and they were equally uninterested in repetitive practice. Okay, so repetitive drill-based practice, very boring. Okay. Second, I noticed that in the production phase, students had a greater focus on rehearsing, reproducing this structure than real communicative practice. Okay, so from a theoretical perspective, it is problematic. From a practical or pedagogical perspective, it is also problematic. Okay, it doesn't motivate student. It doesn't engage student. Okay, so what about a task-based lesson? Right, task-based lesson. I'm not sure if you've heard about this before. Are you familiar with task-based lesson? Task-based?
We learned about task-based language learning.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. Okay, so usually, so if you compare the task-based procedure, right, with the PPP procedure, it's kind of like reverse, right? It's kind of opposite. It's very different. So during the pre-task phase, the teacher doesn't teach grammar. The teacher should refrain from teaching grammar. What the teacher does is prepare students for task performance, right? So by introducing the task, for example, okay, the class today we are going to plan a party. Okay, so you work in groups and plan a class party and invite everyone in school to your party. Okay, so introducing the topic and the task. And then the teacher may get the student to watch a video in which people perform a similar task. For example, where family members discuss how to plan an upcoming birthday party for the youngest person in the family, for example. The teacher may highlight useful vocabulary, for example, food, recipe, menus, but not presenting grammar. So, okay, so the focus is totally on meaning, okay? During the task cycle, the student perform the task in pairs or groups. For example, they make a list of things to buy, they make a guest list, and even sitting arrangements. So who should sit next to who? And the teacher may go around, monitor, offer help. If correction happens, it's done very quickly, on the spot, very quickly, implicitly, in order to, avoid interrupting the conversation flow, the communication. The student will report task outcome to the class. For example, sharing with the class their party plan. And then during the post-task phase, this is where teaching grammar can be done. All right, so the teacher can provide further practice, can give feedback on task performance, and focus on problematic form, okay, and give students further practice so that they can improve the problematic forms. So focus on form or teaching or explicit teaching of grammar comes at the end. So so the first phases of the lesson focuses on meaning and communication. rather than form. Okay, so this example is still from Boyd and Newton, 2022, right? Article, right? So they turn that material, they turn that lesson, this lesson into a task-based lesson. And how did they do that? Okay, so this is what they get the student to do during the pre-task phase. Okay, student brainstorm the school subjects in groups, and then they listen to a dialogue between two friends about their timetables, and then they fill the table with the information from the dialogue. Okay, so the dialogue here serves as a model to support student task performance in a later phase. Okay, so for the task cycle, they use what we call an information get task, right? A two-way information get task. Okay, so they put students in pairs, okay, and assign them roles. For example, one student is from class 4A, the other from class 4B, okay, and each is given two timetables, their own timetable and their partner's timetable. And you can see that their timetable is complete, but their partner's timetable is not complete. So their task is to have a conversation to obtain the missing information from the partner and fill the table with the missing information. Excuse me. And then later on, they need to compare and contrast their timetables to find similarities and differences. Okay, so this is what we call a two-way information get task, because it involves a two-way exchange of information. So both students need to provide and obtain information instead of just only one provide and one obtain. Sorry, one provide and one ask, right? So does it make sense so far? Any questions so far? Okay, now can I move on? Right? Okay. So there are other kinds of tasks as well, but information get tasks are very useful for teaching grammar. So this is another example of an information get task, right? So students, okay, are given, they work in pairs, and each is given a different picture, right? Like slightly different picture, and with now showing the picture to each other. So they need to get together, describe the picture so that they can find the number of similarities and differences between their two pictures. All right. So the main point here is don't show the picture to your friend, so that your friend has to ask you a question to obtain information. Okay? Because if we show the picture to your friend, then he or she will not have the reason to ask for information anymore. So in order to create a reason for communication, right, you shouldn't show the pictures to each other. Yeah. Okay, this is another example of an information get task. The student work in pairs. Each is given a different version of a map. For example, one has a police station and supermarket on their map, while the other has park and post office on their map. Okay, and then also a list of places where they want to go. And importantly, these places are not shown on their map. So, and then they have to work together, and without showing their map to each other, they need to talk to each other to find out how to get to the places in the list, and then mark them on the map. Okay, so again, this is the kind of task where the student have to get together in order to obtain the missing information to complete the task. Another one, guess who? My daughter really likes to play this game with me. Very interesting game. So you can divide your student into two groups or into pairs as well. Okay, and you show the pictures, show the grid of different people on the board for them, and then tell them, okay, now each of you choose one person, but don't reveal your choice to your friend. Okay, so Harry, you can ask me a question about the person of my choice, for example. So I have chosen one. I have chosen, but I won't tell you. I won't tell you. You need to ask me a question. okay, about their physical appearance using so that you can guess who I have chosen. Okay, so I have chosen one person, and you and Harry, you have to ask me a question to identify the person of my choice.
Okay, is it a male or female?
I think it's a male, I think.
It's a male. Okay. Does he has a good hair?
He has long hair. Yeah.
He has a long hair.
Yeah.
He has a long hair. Wait a minute. Does he has a dark skin or white skin?
Fair skin, not dark skin.
Okay. Long hair. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Is there in the name that I can guess?
There's no name.
There's no name.
There's no name. Yeah.
Okay. The male, long hair.
Mm-hmm.
And then which one is that? I don't see.
Ask more questions.
Wait a minute. What kind of t-shirt or shirt that he or he's wearing?
I can't see very clearly. But it looks like a sport t-shirt.
Oh, sport t-shirt. Oh,
I think
he wear the red cap?
Yes.
Or hat?
Yes.
I think I know your person that you choose.
Yeah. So that's the second one, right?
Yes.
Second column.
Yes. Second column, the third line, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So you got it.
Okay.
So that's the game. So that's a game, right? So that's a guesswork game that you get your student to talk to each other in order to complete the task. Okay. Right. So what is a task? Okay. So what are tasks, right? So the example that I have shown you now are called tasks, and they're very different from exercises. Okay. There are many different definitions of task, but basically, they all share, common features. Okay, so a task must focus primarily on meaning. Okay, so in other words, students communicate for real when they carrying out the task. A task must involve some kinds of gap. It can be information gap, as we have just now seen. It can involve opinion gap. Opinion gap meaning like discussing. Okay, so discussion task, or reasoning gap meaning solving a problem. For example, if we have a list of patients that need a heart transplant, and you have a candidate who can, you have someone who donates the heart, right? Now you need to discuss among yourself to choose the best candidate for the heart transplant based on the information that you have. So that's a kind of like problem solving, right? Reasoning gap task. Free use of language, meaning students are free to use whatever language forms that can best express their meaning, right? And the content, the language are not controlled by the teacher or the task, meaning the teacher doesn't tell them, what language features, what grammar points, or what vocabulary you need to use. Okay, they can use any language that is available to them, any grammar, any vocabulary, any resources that are available to them to express their meaning. It must relate to real world or have a non-linguistic outcome. So it's not just a display of language knowledge, but you need to have a specific outcome at the end. For example, identify the person of your friend's choice. Okay, so the guy with the red cap, or completing the timetable. Okay, completing the map, for example, or coming up with a list of similarities and differences between the two pictures. Okay, so those are the outcomes that are not linguistic outcomes. Okay, they're concrete outcomes. Okay, so a task versus an exercise. So a task is different from an exercise, right? Because for a task, the main focus is on understanding, conveying meaning. Okay, so communication. There should be a gap. Students should use their own language. There should be an outcome, not just display of language. But for an exercise, the main focus is on accuracy. So, like doing, for example, filling the gap, making correct sentences, for example. There is no information gap. There is no communication gap of any kind. Students use Dutch language. So basically, if the focus of the lesson is present continuous, then student will practice using present continuous in the exercise. The main purpose is to display knowledge of grammar or knowledge of language, accurate use of language. Okay, sounds very abstract, but I'm going to give you an example. All right, so if you look at this example, I usually let my TESOL students experience those activities. They really like it. Okay, so developing, so grocery shopping on a tight budget. All right, so suppose that you are flatmates, right? You flatting together, and suppose that you live on a tight budget because of the time of high inflation, right? So everything is expensive and you have a tight budget to spend on. Now you have to work together to make decision about your grocery shopping. Okay, so what to buy, where to buy, so that you can save as much money as possible. Okay, or so that you can live within your means. Okay, so the first thing is work together, list the things that you want to buy, all of them. Okay, so that's the first step, so to work together. After that, sort things into two categories, things that you need versus things that you want but may not need. Okay, so when we are tight on money, we want to prioritize our needs, not our wants. Okay, so students do that. And after that, within each category, you need to rank the items according to their importance. Okay, so for example, if you need bread, milk, egg, salmon, for example, okay, rank them in terms of importance. Okay, decide, and then based on the ranking, decide on the final shopping list. So choose only 5 items from each category. After that, go to the website of 2 big supermarkets to check the price of each item, make a comparison of the prices, and then decide where to go to buy each item. Okay, so after that, share your experience with friends, with the class who want to shut down their food bills. Okay, so how you save on your grocery shopping, right? So is it a task or exercise? Go back to the criteria. Do students communicate for real? Yes, they do. They exchange real meaning. Is there a gap? Yes, there is a gap in opinions, because you may have a different opinion of what is important, what is more important, right? Or what is a need, what is a want, for example. Do students use their own language? Yes. Okay, because they will need, because this is a communication, like a real, an authentic kind of communication task. They will need to draw on any linguistic means, any linguistic resources, any grammar, any vocabulary that they know in order to express their meaning. Is there an outcome rather than display of language? Yes. Okay, they have a list of supermarkets, list of shopping items, and list of supermarkets to go to buy each items. All right, so yes, there's a concrete outcome. Okay, look at this. What about this? Okay, students work in pairs and look at a picture in the textbooks, and they take turn to ask and answer question about the picture. Now, this is very, very typical of grammar activity in textbooks. Okay, so describe 2 rooms. What is there on Mary's desk? What is there on John's desk? What is next to Mary's bed? What is next to John's bed? What is under Mary's table? What is under John's table? All right. Is it a task or an exercise? Okay, I think I have already said here is an example of an exercise. Why is it? Why is it? Because if we refer to the 4 criteria here, do students communicate for real? No. They're talking about something, it's not their own meaning. All right, the purpose is only to practice describing, objects using preposition on, next to, under. Is there a gap? No, there's no information gap here, because students can both look at the picture, so they can see what is there on the picture. So there's no information gap. It's not like the guess who activity, guess who task, where Harry doesn't know who the person of my choice is, and he has to ask me a question in order to identify that person, right? Do students use their own language? Maybe, but they are essentially required to use the given language item, which is preposition, right? Is there an outcome rather than display of language? No, there is no concrete outcome rather than display of language. So this is an exercise, okay? We don't want our materials to contain only exercises. Okay, we want to have tasks in our grammar teaching materials as well. Okay, all right, a small quiz for you before we move on. How can I move this around? Okay, right. Whoops. Okay. Right. So I have 4 different activities here. Can you tell me which one may be a task and which one may be an exercise?
Hello, everyone. You may guess which one is task, which one is exercise.
Okay, I give you 2 minutes to read through and make your decision, and then can you just put your answer in the chat box? Okay, any answers so far?
I don't see any answer appear. Come on, everyone. Task or exercise?
All right, let's check. Number 1. Is it task or exercise?
Anyone can guess?
Can you raise your hand if you think it's a task?
Bulanku Maharani. Can you hear my voice, Bulanku Maharani? Maybe you can answer that. Anyone?
Let me guess, sir.
Okay.
Number 1 is exercise.
Why is it an exercise?
I'm not sure.
Okay, go back to the 4 criteria. Okay, is there a gap? Is the focus on meaning? Can students use their own language? Is there an outcome rather than linguistic display? So firstly, do students communicate for real?
Safina?
Do they express their own meaning, or are they asked to do, to say something that the teacher want them to say?
Describe what they see.
The picture. So say what the teacher want them to say, right? Because they have to use the target structure there is and there are. Okay, is there a gap of some kind?
Is there a gap? Safina? Ada semacam perbedaan jawaban nggak kalau dalam bahasa Indonesia? Sorry, Min, I have to mix my language.
Oh, it's okay.
Safina? Ayo dijawab.
Can you help me, sir?
Ya, ada
Yes.
perbedaan jawaban nggak? Gap itu artinya semacam kayak nggak ada perbedaan jawaban ketika apa namanya? Kalau gap itu artinya ada perbedaan jawaban. Misalnya kayak argumen itu kan beda-beda. Tapi kalau dengan gambar itu jawabannya itu akan beda-beda atau semua sama?
Different.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
do you think is there any gap?
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
The whole class can look at the picture together. So they all see the same picture. So there's no information gap here because everyone can see, right? Everything can see what is there in the picture, right? So there's no gap, and students should use the given language, right? There are, and there's no concrete outcome. right? I mean, the purpose is just to practice using the structure there is and there are. So yes, you are right. This is an exercise, right?
Exercise.
So maybe, yeah. So maybe I'll give the answer to the rest so that we can move on quickly. Looking at time, right? I haven't got much time left. So number 2 is a task, okay? Because one describes how to get to the supermarket, while the other one draws, okay, the route, meaning one has the information that the other one doesn't have. So they have to use whatever language resources that they have in order to reach a mutual understanding, right? In order to complete the task. The outcome of the task is a picture of the route, okay? So they communicate for real. There's a gap of information there. They are free to use their language, and there's an outcome. Number 3, student works in group to solve a murder mystery. And there are 4 suspects. Each group reads about 1 suspect. Then they regroup with peers from the other group to share information and decide who the murderer may be. So this is a very typical, okay, example of a task, okay, where students have to share information that one has but the other doesn't, and to solve a problem, okay. And the outcome is, you know, solve the murder mystery, right? So decide who the murderer may be. Number 4, students work in pairs, write a script of a dialogue, and then role play the dialogue together. So this is an exercise because again, there's no gap, scripted language, okay, and there's no outcome, right? The outcome, there's no concrete outcome rather than just practicing speaking out loud a dialogue that you have written a script for. Okay, right. So why task-based teaching of grammar? So you see, you know, what a task looks like, how it is different from an exercise, and you know that when teaching grammar, we want that our materials, okay, we want our materials to contain task, not only exercises but task, okay, to encourage students to use the target language for meaningful communication, right? So why task-based teaching of grammar, right? Because what happens is when students perform tasks, because you know, they use their own language to express meaning. They get feedback, you know, reaction from their partners, showing non-understanding, for example. If they do not make themselves understood, they repeat, rephrase to make sure that they get understood correctly. They focus on expressing themselves. They may make mistakes that trigger the need to negotiate meaning. And all of these processes are beneficial for language acquisition, all right? Because students interact for meaningful purpose rather than repeating after the teacher without understanding, okay, or reading out loud a dialogue in the textbooks. Students need to use a broad range of vocabulary and grammatical structure, not only using vocab and structure determined by the textbooks. Students notice the gap in their language competence when miscommunication happens, and they learn how to solve the problem, how to achieve, re-establish mutual understanding. Students use language to achieve a real-life goal. For example, creating a recipe, planning a party, reading maps, giving direction, so on and so forth. All right, so that's the benefits of using task-based teaching material. Okay, so how to turn an exercise into a task? How to do that? That's our job, right? So when we look at the textbook and we see that there are too many exercises, there are not enough tasks, and we want to turn a PPP lesson into a task-based lesson to motivate our students to use language for communication, for example. Okay, so how to do that? Okay, make sure that our students communicate for real and make sure that they have a reason to communicate. And how can we do that? 2 things. Create a communication gap. Second, have a non-linguistic outcome. All right. Sounds very vague, but I'm going to give you a concrete example of how we can turn this exercise into a gap, into a task, an information gap task. Okay, so remember this one where the students work together, look at the same picture in the textbook and have a conversation about, you know, Mary's desk and John's desk, right? This is an exercise. And if we want to turn it into a task, okay, we can create a gap and add an outcome. So we can tell the student, okay, we can give the picture to one of the students, okay, withhold the picture from the other student. So only one student has the picture, and the student who has the picture must describe it, okay, so that the other student can draw it, okay. And after the other student, after both students complete the description and drawing, they come together to compare two pictures to see if they are the same, if they look similar. Okay, so this is a task because firstly, you have a communication gap. Okay, one student has the information, the picture, the other doesn't have. And that creates a reason for them to come together and share the information. And then you also have an outcome here, which is a picture, okay, that the other student draws based on the information that they obtain, right, from the describer. Okay, simple, right? Is that simple? Okay, so let me see. We have about 10 minutes left. And
yes, we have 10 minutes to go.
yes. And then I would like to give you this exercise to do. Okay, before we move on to Q&A. All right. So turn this exercise into a task to allow your student to practice the target structure WH question for meaningful communication. Okay. How to turn this exercise into a task? Any ideas? Any good ideas to share?
Hello, anyone? Any idea?
Harry, any ideas?
Oh, it should be me again. Halo adik-adik. Ada yang mau jawab nggak? Anyone can give some idea how to turn this exercise into task?
Remember, you need to create a gap. Okay? Make sure that the one who asked the question doesn't have access to the information. If they can see the information, like I was born in London in 1984, then there's no reason for them to ask the question. Okay? Then they ask the question only because for the practice, for purpose, right? And we don't want that. We want real purpose for communication. So we need to create a gap. Okay? The person who asked the question cannot have access to the information and have an outcome. Okay? An outcome that you can show to people, okay, to the class, to the teacher. It doesn't just, practicing asking and answer question, but you have to have a concrete, a definite outcome to show to the class. So two things.
Maybe should I have the answer, or maybe my student? Hello, my students. Where are you? Hello, everybody. Can have any idea? Can anyone have an idea how to change this exercise to task based on what we have learned from Dr. Nguyen, the previous slides, right? Wait a minute. Usually you talk a lot in my class. Why is everyone just keep silent here? Alda, Anissa, Safina, Buana Tirta, anyone? Maybe? Hello, everyone. Okay.
Do you want to hear my suggestions if no one is willing to share?
Let me guess. Let me try. If nobody answered this, oh my God, I becoming a student right now. Okay, that's fine.
Sorry for putting you on the spot.
Okay, maybe we can turn this kind of what is that exercise into some kind of, how do I say? It's all about I live in Milan, I got two brothers. Maybe we can create some kind of situation when somebody becoming the, how do you say, someone's in the airport or something like that. Imagine being the officer of the airport, and then someone who just want to go or getting inside of the country, for example.
Right.
So the
border,
officer
right?
needs to know about the information regarding to the person, where they're from, what do you do, or what he wants to do here, or something like.
Yeah, and then
Maybe
you
that's,
decide.
yes.
That's a very good idea. That's a very good. I like the idea. I think it's wonderful. Right. So like role play. Right. So
Yes, thank you,
one
Sensei.
immigration officer at the border at the airport, and the other
Yes.
one is a visitor. So the person, the visitor has a table of information about themselves.
Right.
Their personal information, their purpose for visiting, and then the immigration officer will ask question, and then write down, take notes of the answers, and then decide whether the visitor has a genuine reason to visit or not. Okay, and then decide whether you let them in or not. That's a
Okay.
very good task. Yeah, you have an outcome. The outcome
Right.
is to decide whether you let them in or not, right? Okay,
Yes.
very good. Yes. Yeah, that's very good. I mean, I like that, and I also like the game ideas. I mean, one you can also turn it into a game. For example, pretend that you are a famous Indonesian person, like a public
Okay.
figure. Okay, and people ask me. So the person who pretends to be, right, the public figure, has all the information in front of them, and the class need to ask question in order to guess who that person is.
Okay.
So that can also be, like a way, one of the way to turn it into a task. Or I mean, simply you can simply turn it into an input based task by, for example, getting students to listen to someone talking about themselves, and then fill the table, okay, with different columns, where, when, how many, why, okay, and then just write down just take note of the information and complete the table with the information that they get from the recording. So different ways of turning. You can turn it into input based task, as I've just now shared, or an output based task, like what Harry said about the immigration officer and visitor exchange, okay, or the guess who I am kind of game. Does it make sense, everyone?
I hope so. I think everybody know about it.
Right. Thank you. So I hope that after today's lesson, you have the skills, okay, in order to evaluate whether the grammar teaching materials would be good enough, and how you can, turn it into a more communicative kind of practice in order to help your student to use the language for meaningful interaction, instead of just doing control practice in a mechanical way, which really demotivates them. Okay. So we still have 3 more minutes for Q&A, right?
Yes, we still have 3 minutes, around 3 minutes for having that. By the way, I have some kind of things in my mind, by the way. I mean, can I give my opinion about it? Sometimes when we talk about tasks and also exercise, maybe it's going to be easier for the teacher for giving the exercise for the student, usually who is just, how do I say, with the low proficiency level of the English, right? Because when we push for the student, we create some kind of task which is very, what is that, various, which is very, what is that, the setting, and then the outcome we prepare it. But sometimes when we give it to the students, for example, for the junior high school student, which is from the low level of the proficiency of English, maybe they're too shy to say without any, what is it, how do I say, like in exercise they have some kind of, how do I say, kind of the 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 things that help them to say something, But when we just give directly them some kind of the task, maybe with the low proficiency of English from the students, maybe they are still struggling. They have to struggle to create
Okay.
something. What do you think about that?
Okay. Yes. Thank you for the question. I think I'm going to cite Rod Ellis. Right? It's not my own idea, but according to Rod Ellis, you can definitely use tasks with low-level students, but instead of using output-based tasks right away, you need to start with input-based tasks. So show them like a model. Okay. So by getting them listen to people doing tasks, for example, listen to someone talking about themselves and then fill the table. Okay. Or listen to an interview. Okay. Like, for example, so where do you come from? Like an interview between an immigration officer and a visitor. So listen to the dialogue, fill the table with the information, and then decide whether the immigration officer's decision is fair, is legitimate. Okay, after you listen to the dialogue and fill the table, then by that way, you are exposed to the target language structure. You see how they are used in order to make meaning. Okay, so from that, and you build the production skills. So start with comprehension skill first. That's his idea, and I think it totally makes sense. I totally agree with him.
Yes, that's right. Because that's the challenge, especially when we have to deal with some low proficiency level of the student that we.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Because I
don't object the use of exercises. They are useful in their own ways, right?
Yes.
But if teaching grammar or if grammar lessons are only based on exercises, it doesn't help our student. Okay, to acquire the language. So there should be, usually in task-based lessons, right? Exercises are used at the end in order to consolidate grammar knowledge, to deal with problematics, form, error correction, further practice. But we don't start the lesson with grammar right away because we want to divert our students' attention from meaning, from communication.
Yeah, because what we do here usually, when I teach my student, I mix them. I mean, some of them need to make it into the task, some of them need to be into the exercise, because as you know, when it comes to the junior high school students material or maybe senior high school materials, usually it is really it's needed for them to have some exercise in order to improve.
I agree. Yes. And I think task-based teaching doesn't disregard exercises. Okay, so scholars who advocates of task-based instructions like Rod Ellis, for example, he doesn't say that we can't use exercises, but we don't use it at the beginning.
Yes, that's right. Okay, I agree with that.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, I think it's already up. Time is up. But if there are any question, maybe if anybody here want to say something to Dr. Nguyen, I will be very welcome. Hello.
I hope that it makes sense to people. Yeah.
For me, it really makes sense, but I hope that my students here also can understand well about it. Let me check their understanding later on in my class, in my own class, by the way, in the classroom.
So I'm going to send you the slides after today so you can share with the students.
Sure, absolutely.
I think if they have the slide with them to take notes and listen to the recording one more time, then it may be easier for them. Yeah.
Yes, of course. At the end of this course, I mean, we are going to have a project for having what is that? The material for junior high school students, by the way. Yeah, we are going to make some groups. I already make some group for my students, and each group needs to make some one topic for the we call it model, not the textbook, by the way, because this model will be based on maybe from specific topic based on the syllabus that we have in the junior high school.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Great exercise for them. Okay. I think it's enough for this session, everyone. Right? We will see you again, Dr. Nguyen, for the next session next week at the same time and the same session for the second session. I mean, right?
Right.
So before we close this session, I think it will be better if we take some picture. Is that okay, everyone?
Cool.
Can everybody turn on the camera? Waduh, kalau udah pada cuma foto aja. Pada nongol, pada diskusi, pada ngilang.
Not
Halo.
not a very good time for the lecture, right? Because it's just after lunch. Right?
Yeah, but that's fine. But that's fine.
Yeah.
This is the only way for us to manage the schedule, right?
Right.
Because what you
Because
said
of our
before,
time
when you
difference. Yeah.
if you manage for 10 o'clock in your time, it's going to be 5 o'clock in the morning in my place. So it will be difficult for
Right.
us to
Right.
start, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, some of the students has already opened up the camera. Please say cheese for everyone.
Mhm.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, that's all. Thank you, by the way. So thank you so much for Min. We will see you again
Yep.
next week. I
Thank
think that's
you.
all for today's session. Let's just
Thank
finish our
you.
class
See
today
you.
saying alhamdulillah. See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Miss.
Adik-adik, sampai jumpa lagi minggu depan di waktu dan jam yang sama ya. See you.
Terima kasih, Pak.
Pada paham nggak kalian tadi ya? Paham ya?
Sedikit.
Loh, kok sedikit gimana? Nanti kalau besok minggu depan lagi kalau ada kesulitan atau terlalu cepat atau terlalu apa namanya?
Iya, Sri itu terlalu cepat
Itu ngomong
ngomongnya.
ya.
Ini kan, iya terlalu. Menurut terlalu.
Biar besok apa namanya? Biar temponya diperlambat sama apa namanya? Sama Profesor Dr. Nguyen besok ya. Oke ya, thank you ya semuanya ya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.